Greetings, everyone. I am very excited today to be in conversation with my friend Berta Kuhnel, and we're going to be talking about different paths to shamanic healing and how we can be in this time of profound transformation, working on our own process and then being able to support the healing in the world. And this is a mission that Berta and I are both passionate about. But let me give you a little bit of background about her and then we'll get into our conversation. So, Berta is a gifted holistic healer working in a variety of modalities. She's a licensed acupuncturist, does cranial sacral therapy and Reiki. For the last 25 years, she has included and focused on shamanic healing and training. She took the Healing the Light Body training through Four Winds, which is where we met 24 years ago.
Mhm.
She became a senior teacher for that program for 10 years and then trained the teachers for that program. Now is doing her own synthesis of shamanic healing, working with the medicine wheel, and we're going to be talking about all of that today. So thank you for being here today, Berta.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. Yeah, yeah.
I'd love to start by talking about how you got into shamanism and exploring that training back 24 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting, so many, what takes us on our journey, what steps us into that place of journey, and it's so different for each person. And for me, it was healing crisis, really. And I think for many people that could be the case. I had a brain tumor, which I didn't know that's what I had, but I had a healing situation that came up, and I was exploring various modalities to see, how to address that. And then I found out that I had a brain tumor, a neuroma. It wasn't cancerous, but a tumor. And so I tried, I took 6 months and kind of went, okay, I'm gonna, I'm this alternative healer. I'm gonna do something about this. And I tried a ton of modalities. And because it's a neuroma, uh, it's scar tissue on top of scar tissue, so it's not like it's a tumor filled, so it doesn't shrink. So anyway, and because it was in the brain, you couldn't really like take vitamin B shots right into your brain. So I ended up having to have surgery. But before I did the surgery, I stepped into such a deep level of transformation and healing that by the time I actually stepped into the surgery, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, take that out, as opposed to that the surgery was a big deal. And the surgery, of course, went very smoothly, but it did open up for me a different engagement with life. And it got me looking at, okay, so what is the root of what created this problem in the first place? Instead of like, here, let me be palliative and let me just, how do I live with it? But what created it? And how do I bring healing to the places that created it in the first place? Those deep emotional pieces that were packed away in that consolidated tissue. And to work at that level. And I had just barely touched shamanism when I ended up doing the surgery. I had had one session, and I barely touched it. And there was some local people that were doing some shamanic stuff of a different tradition than I ended up studying. But it opened the doorway to that. There are we all know that there's emotional components to healing work, but that there's also the accumulated energy that gets caught into that construct as well as the emotional constructs that get anchored in as well. But where I was really on the prowl for when I started the Light Body program was how can I help my clients, work to the depth of what is holding their patterns in play. And at the time, I wasn't looking as much at patterns as I was looking at health, because I was primarily at that point a healer. And so I was looking, well, how do I get to the bottom of this, the root of this healing issue going on? And I was looking for that for my clients as well. So that's how I really got into it. But then once I stepped in and took it, I started recognizing the level of life pattern and life engagement and karmic pattern and genetic pattern and just the huge amount of patterns that collated into one's life and
Mm.
created so added to the what created so much of that journey path. And so the unraveling had to involve all of that.
It's a beautiful way of describing what shamanic healing is,
Hmm.
because I too started exploring it more in depth and actually started exploring it in the 90s, working with a Mohawk medicine woman, then did the
So
healing the
cool.
light body training, trained with a number of different teachers and shamans. But part of what really drew me to it is that it addresses all of those layers: physical, emotional, energetic, spiritual,
Yeah.
and taps into our ancestral lineage, our genetic history, our past life trauma, and really provides a context for healing at all of those levels. And
Yeah.
like you said, getting to the root of what the issue is.
Yeah. And we really want that. We really want to get to the root. I mean, I have clients all the time that come in and it's like, what created this? Why does this keep happening? And to recognize that that place of this isn't happening to you, that this is an opportunity for you to take ownership of your pattern and what created your patterns and how to change that. We have this trauma that happens, or we have these life events that happen. But underneath those, what we really have is we created this place of where there was something happened that created an emotional lack, a need, what wasn't provided.
Mm.
And then we started living our lives from the place of trying to gain that. How do we gain that piece that's been missing? And we spend so much of our lives in trying to gain that. And then we start to look and see how many events in our lives are all about how do I gain this? And maybe it wasn't the most efficient way to gain it or even the most effective way to gain it, but yet it's the motivation of so much of our choices. So I think the first place that we really have to step into is that place of awareness of what is creating our life engagement and the motivation of our life. And then there's that bigger place you can go to when we look at the evolution of the species. It's like, why did I choose to be here in the first place? Which I love that really big, big piece. Not just I chose this pain and this, but the really big piece. Why did we choose to be here at this amazing time that you talk about all the time too? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're so describing that journey to alignment with the soul self, to get out of the trauma patterns, to get out of the coping
Yeah.
mechanism developed to deal with the trauma.
Yeah.
And, the research would indicate that if we don't bring that into conscious awareness, up to 90% of our thoughts, behaviors, actions, patterns are shaped by what's unconscious
Yeah.
and the trauma from the past. So, in clearing that, it allows us then to move more into alignment with our soul self and express our true self and evolve spiritually and then be a part of the evolution of what's happening collectively.
Yeah.
And talk some, Berta, about you and I in our training with the Peruvian shamans, heard them talk about this is the time of Pachakuti,
Yes.
critical time on the planet for us
Yes.
collectively. Can you describe your
Yeah.
understanding of that?
Yeah, and the thing when you talk about the shaman that we worked with in Peru, the Laika, the Kero, the thing that touched me the most about them was their humility. I have to say that really touched me. But was when we would gather with them in a room, and what they would be saying is, "Take this to the world. It is time." It wasn't like, here's this little medicine and hold it and you can only come get it from us. It was like, take this to the world. It is time for the world. It's that Pachakuti, that time of turning over, the turning over of the world. Pacha means world, Kuti, that turning over. So that turning over of the world, it's time to, all of those ways in which we have been living, I would say triangulated and in hierarchy, victim, perpetrator, rescuer, and in hierarchy and that old holding. It's like in oppression, really, oppression as a spiritual being that we are. the times that we've been living in that compression and oppression of who we are and how we engage life, and almost in dream walking through the world, and it's time to awaken, and it's time to take ownership, and it's time to evolve.
Mm.
And it's so beautiful because the rites, the initiations that they offer is really their true medicine. And those initiations are packets, quantums of energy that allow our frequency to upgrade. And there's a whole journey just with, they have 9 rites, and there's a whole journey with those rites. The first rites are those rites that really allow us to come into right relationship with ourselves. And then we start to come into right relationships with our community, and then we start to come into right relationship with our world, and then we start to come into right relationship with this new time. And then we dance with spirit and come into right relationship with co-creation. So the rites themselves take us on that journey path of ever expanding right relationship and bringing our frequency to the level that we can actually do that. And of course, we can help that by moving the density that lives within our fields.
So beautifully said. And that is so much of what they're teaching was how do we clear that density, that heavy energy, to
Mm-hmm.
then be more in our wholeness, to be more in right relationship with ourselves so we can be in right relationship with all of life.
Yeah.
And what I felt being in their presence was how much they were from the heart
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Totally.
and how much there is that focus on Aini being in right relationship and how we, particularly in the West, have gotten so out of balance. And
Yeah.
I love their term about Pachakuti because they're not saying that means the world is going to turn upside down. We have to go through a pole shift, but we need to radically change our consciousness and move into new ways of being so that we are back in harmony with each other and all of life. And that's the
Yeah.
critical time that we're in this processional cycle right
Yeah.
now.
There's a quote I didn't bring it with me exactly, but that Don Francisco, who is the spiritual leader of the group that I was studying with, that we studied with, um, he about the Mosul Karpai rites, the rites of this new time, which are the rites that bring the energetic frequency of this new paradigm into form into all of us. And he said, it's time to be like the new leaves of spring leaves of a tree, where those new leaves can open up and you have that new garment to wear. It's like that new awakening, the new leaf, not the old leaf that's falling away, but to have that new leaf that opens up and becomes your new garment. And those rites bring that new frequency for us to then walk with. It's so beautiful. And at the same time, he's like bouncing on trampolines and being very playful and putting rocks in your pack while you're walking at 14,000 feet. He's very playful. And yet he holds the medicine so strongly. Yeah.
And it also really moved me that they understand and stressed, as do so many other shamans and spiritual teachers, that if even enough of us, a minority on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
go through that transformation and healing and emanate that into the collective, it will change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I do what I do. And I'm sure is why you do what you do as well. And there's so many people around the world with so many paths, whether they're shamanic or whether they're transformative or whether they're, even mental emotional. There's so many paths that are all working at this amazing time, I think, of evolution of humanity to upgrade the frequency of each and every one of us. And that involves, bringing that light in to shine on the density that gets limited and allowing it to transform and opening the way for you to then walk in a new way and be filled more with light. And really the only way to do that is to bring that awareness and ownership and take that transformative journey. And really allow, and what is that transformative journey? It's, what is it that you choose to keep? But what is it that's limiting you that you choose to let go of at this time? and to recognize that it doesn't, we have this concept that transformation has to be difficult and has to be the dark night of the soul. And I think that's old paradigm. And in the new paradigm, transformation has to be shining a light and saying yes to your soul's call to be more than you thought you could be, to be all that you could be, to thrive, not to just survive. And the energetics, as you know, astrologically, the energetics are so there to support us at this time to thrive with ease and grace. If we can bring awareness and ownership. It's kind of key. You can't do it with sleepwalking, but if you can bring awareness and ownership, you can thrive with ease. To transform energetically is really easy. It's really easy.
Well, and as you said so beautifully, Berta, the energies of the earth are supporting us in that,
Yeah,
in her transformational process. The energies of the cosmos are coming to support us with that love and wisdom of the planets and stars. As we open to that, and I truly believe in this time, we can be in such an accelerated time of healing and
yeah.
transformation.
It is fast. I feel like it's really fast. You remember when we took the training and it was like, okay, so get in touch with this new, the new energies, and it's up in the fifth world, and it seems so far away. Like you had to throw your grappling hook out and really yank, yank, yank. Now it's like, oh, there it is, here.
Right here.
Yeah, right here. We're in the solar flares, and the energetics of this time are so supporting us for us to say yes. And then it's like, what steps you into that journey? We think what steps you into that journey, like, oh yeah, I had a brain tumor. Oh yeah, I had a trauma. But really, it's a call of the soul,
Yeah.
you know. And maybe it has to knock a little loud for some of us who are more dense, but it's really the call of the soul, And now it's coming in very strongly, as things feel limited, and it's time for me to like step out of the limitation and step into a space where I have more freedom of who I am to express the fullness of who I am in life. And to get in touch with, the passion that I walked in with to bring to the world at this tipping point, at this beautiful time of transformation in the world.
Part of what's so powerful about that is that we are in a time of transition and turmoil on the planet as the old paradigms are breaking down, and some are trying to cling to those,
Yeah,
creating more chaos. But
yeah,
those old paradigms are ending.
there,
And I think part of what's beautiful about working at this deep level is that it aligns us with our soul selves, with our gifts, and how we can be the creative pioneers helping bring in the new world, the new
yeah,
earth, as we open to the transformation within ourselves and then emanate those gifts into the collective.
absolutely,
But talk
absolutely.
some, you and I both do deep, deep work with the medicine wheel, and
Hmm.
we work with it in different ways, but both know how profound that process is for
Hmm.
healing and transformation. So, talk some about how that's such a deep part of your work.
Yeah, I remember when we first took our training, it was based on the medicine wheel, but it also had all this, how you work with the client stuff. And I walked out with a great tool set, and I was kind of like, what's the medicine wheel? So I had to then do a deep dive for myself on what is that? What is the medicine wheel and what is that journey? And it is that map, a map that's been used in many indigenous tribes and in many ways for centuries. And it's a map of transformation. It's a map of empowerment. And that map is always evolving, but it gives us a way to see outside. What is a map? A map is a way to see outside, to see a reflection of what's happening inside.
Mm.
And it gives us the opportunity to take a look at what's going on with us and look at it in terms of that map so that we see where we are on that journey and how we need to take the next step for our evolution. And when you take the full journey, then it's like to understand that map and all the pieces of it. And some traditions they step in the east, and in our tradition we step in the south. But even as we step into that place of the South, which is what, the South is that place of awareness and ownership. That's the South. It's like, here I am in my little world that I've created. I've spent so much time and energy creating it, but maybe I've outgrown it. So, there's that place of, yes, the South is, here's your little world, but what's the call? The call is that East call of what's next? What am I stepping into? What is that brand new day? That new sun. And so that call for something more steps you into it and lets you then look at that container that you've so beautifully created and go, you know what? I can't quite breathe here.
Mm.
I need more space. It's time to evolve beyond this. And then you step into that journey and you say yes to the journey. And the wheel itself has energetics. And it takes you on that journey path. So as you have that awareness, as you have that ownership of I've created this, but if I created it, I can change it. And then you step into that journey of change. And so that second step of that journey, that west step, is that journey of great transformation. Of great, you might call it cleaning the closet or sorting and shuffling. What am I keeping? What am I letting go of? And to do that energetically, and not to do that as, drudgery or, you don't have to pick up the pick and shovel. To do it energetically, and to recognize it's not just about what's bad and wrong. As you were mentioning, that it's really, in this time particularly, as we step into the new transformation, the new paradigm of transformation, we're stepping into an awareness that transformation is about bringing the gifts forward. It's not about putting on your magnifying glasses to see everything that's wrong. What's
Which is part
wrong
of, I
will
think, the
show
gift.
up by itself.
Well, I think that's part of the gift of shamanic healing too,
Yeah,
because you're not, and this is part of why I pursued it and left traditional therapy, which ends up being so much analyzing things cognitively and delving into the emotions, but not ever being in that deeper transformation that brings us to alignment with the soul self.
right.
So that's ultimately the journey of the medicine wheel, how to come to center and align with the true
To
self
live in
that's
the center, but really it's that, but it's also for me, it is that. It's that journey of connecting to your soul, that journey of connecting to the earth. But it's like to recognize the richness and the beauty of the spirit of who you are and to open the space to walk your true essential self here on earth. Not to have to leave to do that, but to walk it here
in an embodied
in
way.
an embodied way. Yeah. Yeah, and that's very exciting because it's very empowered for one thing. It's not just about being a little, yes, we want to be those conduits. I mean, that's so much of who we are, to be that conduit between heaven and earth. But we are magnificent. And to step in and allow the shedding of what has overlaid on that and brought that, belittled that really,
Mhm.
overlaid on that, and allow it to flourish and thrive. And that's that beauty, like when we step that journey, the Southwest journey of becoming, to shed those pieces and then into that north to see that magnificence of who you are. And then to awaken to that slice of spirit that we each walk as. And the call that we each had to be here at this time, it's so exciting, really, to awaken to that. And then to step into that place of, okay, let's dance. Let's step into co-creation. Let's create this new time from a place of balance, not a place of our own woundedness. So much of creation happens from a place of a wounded engagement. How many of our inventions come because of lack?
Mm.
And what we really want to create in this new paradigm is that from a place of so full you cannot help but express it. And from that place, we're really creating from a fullness overflowing, a fullness of self, a fullness of spirit, a fullness of connection to the earth, a fullness of the passion that we walk with. And from that place, everything that needs to happen will happen beautifully and richly. And with such a deep sense of personal uh, joy.
Mm.
Yeah.
So beautifully said, Berta. And so much of what you're describing is what the age of Aquarius is calling us into.
Yes.
How to clear the blocks and patterns of the past that have held us back, to be in that sovereignty of self, to align with our soul self, to find our unique gifts. We're each a fractal of cosmic consciousness. But
Mhm.
if we don't express our uniqueness and our creative gifts, those won't be a part of the universe. It's
Right.
ours to express. But we're also in this journey with the medicine wheel, remembering our interconnectedness with all that is, our plant and animal allies, our spirit guides, our connection to the earth and sky and cosmos, that sense of being held in that oneness.
Yes.
We're in our uniqueness.
Yes. It's beautiful. And I work with the medicine wheel map, which, it's that map, that reflection, but also the chakra system map. And as you move up through the chakra system, that first chakra, that first chakra is the first thing that was came into embodiment in utero. Those first 8 cells, it creates that first chakra, that perineum, and it's that connection, that rooting, that connection into the earth. And as we bring healing to that place of deeply connecting to the earth and opening the way and knowing how beautifully held we are, those foundational lacks that we're missing is when we didn't get that feeling of welcome. Welcome. You are magnificent and special and so cherished. And welcome to the earth, and to bring healing to that place, to those woundedness that doesn't allow that deep receptivity, that deep holding, to feel that from the mother, the earth. And to bring that in, then we can really grow. We can grow that balance of self. We can grow that sense of self. And from those first 3 chakras, we then step into that place of the heart, which I think is so much about what this new paradigm is about. How do we live our lives from the place of the heart instead of from the place of, the first or second chakra where it's like the battling or whatever? How do we live from the heart? And we can only do that when we bring healing to those lower chakras, to those wounded places, to those places that keep us separate from our knowing of how well held we really are and how cherished we are. And when we can feel that holding, then we can hold that for everyone else and find that place of oneness. It's really hard to find that if you've never had it.
And what part of what you're saying that's so important is that we can't do a spiritual bypass and try to jump into higher consciousness
Yeah,
without doing that healing work of the lower chakras so that we're
right.
really grounded and in that sense of feeling safe and loved and that we belong.
Yes.
And I think part of what you're describing that's so important is we in modern Western cultures have grown up in such a context of illusion of separation.
Hmm.
Separation from each other, separation from the earth, separation from spirit. And what you're describing is how do we heal that and really address those, as you describe it, those early needs that may not have gotten addressed,
Yeah.
so that then we can move into the energies of the higher chakras.
Yes. Yes to all of that. And it's not just the separation, it's the feeling of bad, wrong, cast out. That's so prevalent in our cultures and our religions, and less than and cast out, and those places really need to be healed. And if they're not healed, what we end up doing is we end up, in order to feel good about ourselves, we jump in and feel better or worse than someone. We make our lives in relationship to another, as opposed to just to be ourselves and enjoy the company of another. And that healing of that triangulation, that victim, that perpetrator, that rescuer, that so many of us, it's another map I use a lot, but so many of us find ourselves on, and the way of transforming that is actually not to try to then become a rescuer or then become a perpetrator or demand you're not a victim. It's to step out of that triangle altogether And the only way to step out of that is to receive, to recognize that it's been part of the old paradigm. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It had its place, it had its time, and we learned so much from it. And so instead of going to battle with it, to start to cull the gifts that have been grown from it. And to take all that's been learned there. How much have you learned by stepping in and engaging that place of feeling a victim? How much have you learned by engaging that place of a rescuer? How much have you learned by engaging that place of the perpetrator? None of us think we are, but we all fall into judgment. Yeah. How much have you learned there? How much have you gained?
Mm.
And to receive that and take that quantum of energy and not just mentally be aware of it, but I think that's the beauty of shamanism, is that we're energetically engaging and integrating all that we have grown, bringing it deep into us, all that we have grown, so that we can then walk that medicine. And be it not just for ourselves, but for the world, which changes our frequency and assists others as well. And so I think a lot of, all of those maps that we use and all of that journey that we take is that place of gathering in new quanta and walking from that higher frequency and awareness. We gain understanding as we go on our journey as well. But there is that place where so many of us, and myself included, that we jump to that place of, well, I didn't get love, so I'm going to love myself. Or, I didn't get love, so I'm going to, the more I love myself, then that will make it okay. Well, actually, we all deserve to receive love.
Mm.
And it's not just good enough to love yourself, but people do the best they can. And where we can receive that love from is the universal sources. Receiving that love from spirit, receiving that love from Mother Earth, Pachamama, as we call it, Pacha meaning earth, Mother Earth. Receiving that love from those universal sources, then that separation, is no longer there. And it really brings that deep level of healing to that foundational nourishment that's needed, whether it's safety, whether it's love, whether it's acknowledgement. It's like those three streams are the three that I really see a lot. There's the safety stream, the love streamed, and the acknowledged streamed. And many of us have all of it. Yeah. But when that healing starts to happen there, when you feel that sense of loved, acknowledged, and safe, there is a whole energetic shift that happens to our nervous systems, to our vagus nerve, to, our cells, our tissues, our organs, where there's, an ease and a relax that happens and an allowing of health and vitality. And a lot of the work we do brings in vitality and health, and it brings it in by bringing in those new energies that then inform our cells, our tissues, our nervous system, the way we think, the way we feel. But there's so many levels. We have that physical body, we need to address it. But we need to address it with vitality and richness and healing. We think we need to address it just with pills, and that's not a problem if something's physically there to address it physically as well. But if you only address it physically, it is actually held emotionally, it's held at the level of your journey, and it's held at the energetics. So the beauty of shamanic work is we work at the level of the energetics that then inform the level of the soul's journey, which then informs the level of the emotional, which then informs the physical. So it allows that deep healing to go all the way down to the core. And so many people, if you just heal at the physical, the energetics are still in play. And so things reoccur.
I think that's a key part. And as you were saying, that taps into our chakras also,
Mm-hmm.
because as we both know, our stories from past lives, from the traumas of this lifetime, are stored in our energy body, are stored in our chakras.
Yes.
And we can cognitively become aware of the pattern and work to clear it. But if it's still embedded in our energy field, we tend to still draw that pattern to us. And that, to me, is some of what's so powerful about shamanic work. It clears it energetically, which frees us then to be able to really integrate new patterns and new ways of being. And as you said, it opens us up to that wonder of our interconnectedness with the earth, with the sky, with the spirit guides that are there for us, so
Mhm.
that we're able, I think some of what I think is painful for so many of us, we've all grown up with families where there was some measure of inadequacy or wounding,
Mhm.
and we often get caught in trying to find that from each other, or we replay those patterns on each other.
Absolutely.
And these deeper ways of healing allow us to take responsibility for that, connect to the energies and the spirit guides and helpers that are there for us to really profoundly heal that, to then engage in our relationship with others from a much more balanced whole place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned coping mechanisms a while back there. Because, when we have that foundational lack that happens, let's say you're missing that loved or you're missing that safety, then, you start to create beliefs that, oh, this is what I have to do in order to find that. And you start to create those coping mechanisms. Well, if I'm a good girl, then I'll be safe. Or if I take care of everybody else, then maybe I'll be acknowledged. And those coping mechanisms, if we can take those coping mechanisms and see, oh wow, that's been the motivation. Here I am this, and then here's the motivation of what I'm looking for. If I can just go for that which I have been missing and bring that quantum in universally, the coping mechanism is no longer needed. I no longer need to be this rescuer so that I can be acknowledged. How about going right for acknowledgement? You know,
Mhm.
I no longer need to, be this, the big kahuna in order to be, safe. It's like, how about just go for safety, you know? And it's so beautiful as we step into that medicine wheel journey to start to bring the awareness to what is it that we've been looking for so that we can then bring that quantum in energetically. And so often we've been growing it every time because it was a coping mechanism. Every time were the rescuer, you were growing that acknowledgement. So there's tons of acknowledgement you've been growing, but it's mostly been sitting here at the outside. It hasn't been coming in deeply because you've been so busy being the rescuer, you haven't taken the time to bring in that gift of acknowledgement or the safety or loved. And to really energetically bring that in is such a part of the journey of the wheel. That place of integration, that place of claiming, that place of deeply energetically infusing with that which has been missing.
Mm.
And then to allow that to really bring the healing that evolves from that. And the more we take it in, the more our frequency is that. And then we carry that for the world.
I love too how you keep talking about taking it in at that quantum level.
Mm-hmm.
What we're understanding more and more with quantum physics is when we can work at that quantum and some subquantum level, it's all regenerative energy.
Yeah.
It's the energy of source.
Yeah.
And then it can help us transform and deeply heal whatever's needing to be healed on any level.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And as you said, it can happen so rapidly then when we're working at that level, and then free us to be raising our consciousness, being able to move into a higher frequency because there's nothing holding us back then, and
Right.
emanate that out into the world.
Yeah. And what we talked about really earlier is that idea of that, we've been talking about like, here's this little thing, you in your life and the wounding that happened here, but really it's so much bigger because this is the time of paradigm change. And so we're not working with this little life, we're working with the last 26,000 years and everything that's been accumulated during that time. And you're choosing to come in this lifetime as the soul that you are, the spirit that you are, is to bring healing to that density. So we each come in with choice of what are we going to transform for humanity at this time. And it's really beautiful. Then you don't feel like, oh God, why is all this happening to me? It's like, oh, I get it. I'm transforming the lack of safety. I'm transforming the lack of acknowledgement. I'm transforming the lack of love for myself and for humanity. And then at this place of this tipping point, as we bring that new frequency in, then we walk with it. And in the new paradigm, there is no longer that triangulation. There is no longer that hierarchy because we've brought healing to it. And we are the creators of that next 26,000 years with all the healing that we're doing here and now. I mean, it's profound, the level of healing that we're doing and bringing for the world.
And profound in that you're describing how we as soul selves chose to incarnate in this powerful
Yeah,
time. And
yeah.
it is such a critical time in the processional cycle.
Uh,
And part of, as you know, part of my work in dealing with the processional cycle is how it helps us understand the context of this profound time that we're in on the planet.
mhm.
Helps us to understand that we've been through these cycles of ascending and descending consciousness. And I truly believe that we're at a point where we as humanity can make an evolutionary leap and get off the wheel
Yeah,
and no longer have to keep going through the times of ascending consciousness, forgetting, moving into descending
yeah.
consciousness, and move into higher consciousness, remember who we truly are,
Mhm.
and live from that unity consciousness and higher
Yeah.
consciousness.
And I feel the time is now.
Yeah.
I don't feel like but it's an individual time for now, humanity's time. You know, I don't feel limited by the trauma and drama happening in humanity right now. I do feel that it encourages me to dig deep into my own center because it's so easy. It breaks your heart. So it's so easy to get caught in the unfairness of it or however you might hold it, the suffering of it. And yet for those of us who carry light, all of your community, all of those who listen to this recording, all of those we touch, it is a time for us to hold our light. And to hold our light and recognize just the holding of our light actually helps more than the dropping into the darkness and the blame game and the who's right and who's wrong and all of that, the conflict and the reactivity that happens in the world right now. It's really time to leap outside of that and to step into instead to bring healing to that ourselves so that we can hold a higher perspective and a higher energetic frequency, both for the world.
And as you were saying earlier, it means living from our hearts
Yes.
because that's what opens us up to that unity consciousness. If we get caught in our minds and get caught
Mm-hmm.
in the polarization,
Mm-hmm.
then we're fueling the very conflicts that we're wanting to change.
Yeah.
When we come from the heart, then we're really emanating that compassion and love and energy of unity consciousness.
Right.
But talk some, Berta, about your program that you also offer online called Awakening Awareness, that
Mm-hmm.
is about this exactly.
Yeah.
How do we get out of that reactivity and polarization that is
Yeah.
so pervasive on the planet right now?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I've been seeing over the last years, all of us have been seeing really since 2020 the kind of polarization and conflict that's being um, created by world events. And the I'm right, you're wrongness that's been happening in the world, that polarization, that kind of almost adamant rightness and wrongness, the black and whiteness that's been happening, and it's so devastating. It's been devastating to family systems. It reminds me almost of, the, uh, like back to the Confederates and I mean, just back, way back.
Civil
But where,
War.
yeah, the Civil War, where family systems were split in two, it's been happening at the same level, not with that same degree, but in that same level. And it's coming from, we have to look at what is creating this level of separation. Now, there's the level of, okay, what's creating it out there in the world and the powers that be and the dance that they're doing, and there is all that. But I don't tend to go there. I more look at, because I have no power there. I go to the places where I am empowered. And where I am empowered is to work with my own peace. So if I work with my own places within me, that goes right, yes, wrong, no, yes, that has the black and white within me, the reactiveness within me. If I work with those reactive places within me and transform them, then I'm no longer informed by or reactive to the world events. And that's the opportunity that we have. There's other people who may be here to create revolution and to go fighting those events. I have nothing to speak about that one way or the other. I just know for me personally that the place to go is within. And to really work with the way inside of me that I find I am being reactive. When I read the newspaper, when I hear this, or when I see that, where are the places inside of me that are being reactive? And what is creating my reactive pattern? Instead of going, I'm reactive, they're wrong, it's not going to fix them to do that anyway. But if I work with, okay, I'm being reactive, what is creating that reactivity? And when I go to that place, I find those deep foundational places that have created that reactive pattern. And I transform them. And from that place, I can bring more light there. And when that happens, when I see those other things, I don't have that hook in me anymore that gets reactive and flares out. I can find that place of balance, that place of more light than I carry and hold. Every piece of reactivity that I move, I fill with light. And the program that I created is guiding people on that process of exploring what their reactivity is, exploring what created that reactivity, learning energetic tool sets to transform that, release the density, release the old wounding, and fill it with light energetically. And open their perception and their perspective to higher and higher levels of engaging, to see their life not just as from that place of the victim and something happening to them, but to see themselves as that empowered being, that empowered soul self, as you call it, that empowered soul that's here walking, bringing the richness of who they are into the world. And to be able to take the beginning steps of that awareness, of that ownership, and of that transformation.
Mm.
Transforming those reactive patterns, because they are really easy to see. You don't have to go digging very far to see your reactive patterns. They're really, really easy to see. Excuse me. And they give us a beautiful piece to look at that we can then dive deep inside of ourselves because of. They're all around.
Well, that's a great way to put it. They're these signals then that
They're the
show
easiest thing to see. You can see them really fast. They are. Yeah.
and then they lead us into that deeper journey, as you're
Right.
saying,
Right.
transformation. And I love what you're describing too, because as we then do that deep work and emanate that healing energy, we do impact the world. And that, to me, is the most powerful form of social activism.
It
And you're
is.
really describing that understanding that as it is within us, so it is outside of us. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, you can't clear the war in the world if you haven't healed the war in your own heart.
Yes.
So as we do that work, then we
Right.
become agents of healing for the
Right.
world.
Right. And there's, so many spiritual teachers. I know I had a spiritual teacher for years and years and years, beautiful teacher, but that it's like look within. But it's we yes, we need that peace within, but in order to have that peace within, we sometimes need to do the work that transforms the density and allows the light. And not just give it platitudes, but to allow ourselves to really be that peace. Not try to create peace, but be that peace. And the only way to do that is to transform those places within us that are not in peace, that are reactive. Yeah. And so I was, I felt called to create something that wouldn't necessarily be a year's journey, because the other stuff I do is like a year's journey. Something that people could source and go back to. And, it's an on-demand class so that they can go back and re-listen to pieces and they can source from. And it's 10 hours worth of teaching and 8 modules. So it's kind of an easy, accessible piece to begin your journey with. And there's a lot of teaching pieces in there. There's, energetic processes in there and just a way to start a conscious journey, to bring consciousness to your reactivity and to transform it energetically. Yeah.
And to me, that is so much of what's key with the shamanic path is it is really working it at that energetic level to then change every other level. But it's also, and I know you incorporate this in your work, it's working ceremonially
Yes.
so that it's transforming us below our level of conscious awareness. It's engaging all of us to support us in that transformation. And I know you and I have done so many, for example, fire ceremonies
Yeah.
in our work with these ways of healing and transforming. And I have found that so incredibly powerful. A simple fire ceremony that allows me to release what I'm trying to release and then energize the new patterns. So I'm
Right.
not trying to force myself to make the changes. I'm actually in that deep journey of releasing what needs to be released to open to the energies that are there to support the healing and the transformation, to be embodying it and living it.
Yeah. The beautiful thing with ceremony, well, for one thing, it's just so stunning because it steps us into the sacred. When we step into those sacred moments, when we step into that place of infinity, we open up to the realm of all things are possible. And so there's the beauty of that infinite moment. There's the beauty of that ceremony, any of that sacredness in any ceremony that we step into. But what I love about our traditions and our tradition, that with the shamanic tradition, is it's not just ritual, empty ritual. It is energetic engagement in the
Mm.
ceremony. So it's got a strong energetic component to every ceremony that we do. And as we go to that fire, we're really, like as you said, we're releasing that which is no longer needed. We're claiming that which we've gained. We are stepping into an energetic, like taking that which we've released, that which we've gained, we're sending it up to the energetics, up to spirit, up to source, allowing it to flow down and inform our luminosity to help clear that density and bring in and integrate that newness. It has energetic action and it provides that energetic infusion for the next step of our journey.
Mm.
So, yes, we step into ceremony. Yes, we step into that sacred moment where all things are possible. So stunning, so beautiful, so expansive. And we do it with energetic engagement where it has real action and
And it is
it's
opening up to the
dynamic.
energy
Yeah,
of
and that's the
infinite.
beauty of we in our normal life we live from the literal, and we live from the mental emotional, and there's that ceremony, that sacred realm, that realm of the soul, that sacred realm, and that energetic realm. We weren't raised with it. but it's so powerful, and then shamanic work brings it in so strongly, so beautifully.
And I truly believe that those shamanic ways of working, those spiritual, energetic ways of being, are
Mhm.
at the root of every spiritual and religious tradition. It can take different shapes and forms in different cultures and different times and places, but
Mhm.
it's at the root of every spiritual tradition. And so it goes back thousands and thousands of years. And when we step in to these ceremonies and open to infinity and open to
Yeah.
these energies, we're also stepping into this morphogenic field
Hmm.
of all those across the thousands of years who've done these ceremonies. And we're connecting with those spirit guides, those ancestors, those energies that are then supporting us in our healing and transformation.
Yeah, and I think it's available in every tradition, every tradition. And it's really about how do we step into that event. You know, it's like if if you go to church or if you go to temple, how do you step into that? Are you stepping in as because this is what I'm supposed to do on, Sunday or Friday nights, or are you stepping in from that place of stepping in to have that connection and that engagement with spirit and with your own evolution? And I think it's we bring ourselves and make it sacred,
Mm.
and we can do that in any environment. And so, the what makes a going to temple or a going to church sacred is you
Mm.
and how you step into it,
Mm.
you know. And it's so beautiful that when you can do that, when you learn to bring that sacred moment to washing the dishes or to whatever, when you learn to, but so many of us step into um, religious traditions. And how do we take those religious traditions and make them more real and make them
Or
more
drop to the
alive?
deeper root,
Yeah, at
spiritual
this
roots.
time, in the world, how do we bring the sacredness back into our traditions? You know? I mean, I was just thinking, July 4th just passed. So I was just like, how do we bring the sacredness into what it's not about fireworks, you know? So how do we bring the sacredness into that place at this time of a new paradigm as we are also looking at what is appropriate for how do we live as humanity with each other?
Yeah.
Because that's what it was about. How do we live together as a community, as a culture, as a world, as a state, as a country? How do we live together in harmony and in acknowledgement of each other? And I feel
And
like the only way to do that is by doing your personal work. But that's, how do we bring that sacredness back in there? You know?
which is such a key of the Aquarian age is
Yeah.
how do we then come back into community in harmony, in right relationship with each other? But it has
Yeah.
to start, from my perspective, with the sovereignty of the self
It
and how
does.
that inner healing to be in the sacredness of community to then really hold our connection with unity consciousness, the oneness of all that is.
Yeah.
But before we stop, Berta, say a little bit about one of the things that was so profound for me in the teaching from the Peruvian shamans was they're talking about our becoming homo luminous ones.
Yes.
And you're
I
really
love that.
describing it beautifully in some
Yeah.
of what you're talking
I
about our
love that. Yeah.
luminosity and bringing in the light.
Hmm.
Talk about your sense of that.
I feel it's very real and not just a beautiful image to kind of wish for, you know. I think it's very real. And as we continue to move, energy and woundedness causes density in our luminosity and we have an energy body and a physical body. And it causes density in our physical bodies and in our luminosity. And as we transform that density, we then infuse it with light. And each one of those infusions with light is transforming our cellular structure into a structure that's more crystalline, but more filled with light. more filled with light. And so by doing our work, we are becoming homo luminous. But I think it is, from Homo sapien to Homo luminous, it is part of the evolutionary process that's happening at this time. But how we get there is by transforming and bringing more light into each of our individual beings. Yeah.
And we're really getting the aid right now with the solar energies that are coming in as we're in the solar maximum,
Yeah.
with the galactic energies that are coming in. So
Very
again,
cool.
Earth and
Yeah.
sky are really guiding us in how we can open more and more to that
Yeah.
light being.
There's so much support. And the thing I really love about what I've been hearing, I don't know if it's from you, maybe, but about the solar flares coming in and stuff like that, is that the rays of consciousness that's happening, because that light brings consciousness. So as
Yes,
we become homo luminous, we're not just being more light beings, we're being more conscious beings.
yes.
And it's inherently happening. So sometimes we look and go, how will we ever bring consciousness to this many people on the planet? And I feel like that there's so much support in that universally there is this light coming in that is bringing an upgrade of consciousness. And it's hitting those edges inside of us, which is making people more reactive at this time. Because it's hitting those places where there is density that needs to move. So every time we see a flare of reactance in the world, recognize that there's light coming in that is shining on that, helping to push that through. But because of, as you mentioned, I think way early in the game, that resistance, but because of unconsciousness and resistance, and better the old than the new, I don't know. It's hitting those edges and causing reactivity. As we can bring our own conscious awareness to those places where we're reactive, we can clear the way for that light to flow more freely and upgrade our consciousness, even beyond our own awareness.
Beyond our wildest
And
imagining.
beyond our wildest dreams. Yeah. And we are the new dreamers.
We are, and this is why we're here. And this
Yes.
is what's so exciting about
Yes, we
this
are the
time.
new dreamers, and it's so, so wonderful to walk together in a world of many, many colors and many, many shapes of new dreamers. There's more than one path, there's many, many paths, and they're all bringing in that new dreaming, and it's so beautiful to dance. Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you so much, Berta, for being
Yeah, thank you for
here.
having me. I
Thank
really
you
love it.
so much for the work that you're doing
Oh,
and the way in which you're fully being in your role on the planet and your path and purpose in taking in that light and emanating it. So thank you.
you're welcome, and thank you for having me here. It's been just a joy and joy to connect. Yeah.
And thank you to all of you listening for being a part of this community and for being in this process of supporting each other in this time of healing and transformation. Blessings and love to all of you.